Be seated. Many of you know I like to pop the hood and look under the hood to see what's going on in there sometimes, spiritually speaking. And this is a good time to do that. How accurate do you think your view of God is? Your sense of God. On a scale from 1 to 10, where would you put yourself?
He's almost just like me.
Based on any reason.
Just like me, good.
2. 2? That's within the episcopal margin.
Actually, what I aim for.
Have we secretly settled into an inadequate view of God? Have we made God in our own image? And what image is that? I like Anne Lamott, who said, "You know you have made God in your own image when God hates all the people you hate." We shape God's image in our lives. Have we convinced ourselves that we are objective observers of the nature of God? But do we see God, or do we project onto God? Earlier in Matthew 6, there's this amazing statement by Jesus who describes the eye as the lamp of the body, which puzzles me. I see the eye as the lens through which you see what's really there. But Jesus understood spiritual sight as something we create, something that enlightens the world. So it's proactive. How you see the world will impact your behavior. Jesus understood that we are influenced by something deeper when we see things or we look at things. Our world perspective, perhaps. Our emotional state, perhaps. Our unresolved suffering, perhaps. And that world perspective is shaped by our deepest experiences, which, if left to themselves, turn into negativity, anxiety, anger, depression, even despair. The eye is influenced by what is deep within, and what is deep within often goes unexamined if we leave it to our own devices. Apparently, Einstein once said, the most important question a person can ask is the universe a friendly place? Why? Because where we start influences what we see and what we look for. And Meister Eckhart, mystic of the 13th century, put it this way: the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. That's scary. He is not saying that we control God's view of us, but rather how we see the world will always force God into our categories. This week I read numerous commentaries on this parable of the talents, and all of them simply accepted that the landowner was Jesus' depiction of God. Almost universal. Well, and so most of their concern was focused on trying to explain the harshness of God. This, I believe, is a mistaken assumption, and it results from ignoring two words in the parable, which says, "You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers." It's the did you. Those two words open this parable up. You knew, did you? Really? You knew that? Did you? If you miss those two words, you think this is what the nature of God. But this poor, fearful, frightened, stingy, scared individual bases his action on his view of the master. Now the others say, I knew you were an awful human being, and you gather this or you take from other people. Only he said that. It is his image of God that led to his behavior. And our image of God leads to our behavior. What is our image of God? Einstein. Is the universe, or our spiritual state for that matter, what does that look like? Do we feel positive, hopeful, loved? Does our behavior flow from that? So how do we tend to our view of God? We cannot do it alone. That's one of the images of God that we might have. It's up to me. God expects this of me. I have to figure it out on my own. I don't have to rely on other people. Paul echoes this same understanding in his letter to the church in Thessalonica. As they were facing a season of turbulence, he said, therefore, encourage one another and build up each other, as indeed you are doing. Curtis Almquist, a brother at the Society of St. John the Evangelist, said that part of their monastic foundation rests on encouragement, which they describe as their daily bread. Right at the basis of Christian community is the call to encouragement. How often do we encourage other people? How often do we open up? Because this is the access to an image of God, is a being, allowing ourselves to be seen by other people and letting them in. Encouragement is an amazing thing. It comes from the French word for heart. Curtis says, encouragement will bind up the brokenhearted, just as Jesus promises us. Every day, we can offer encouragement by building up the dignity, amazing worth, wonderful witness, giftedness, and essence of another's loveliness. This will change their day and change their lives and make an eternity of difference. Encouragement will convert someone's fearful heart or lonely heart or heart of stone into the new heart that God promises. Encouragement is how courage gets into our hearts. Encouragement produces courage. Encouragement makes us strong, very strong. It is as simple and profound as that. Encouragement. You have the need and you have the power. This is the role of Christian community. We come here to encourage one another. We are part of a body and we are reliant upon our relationships to encourage us, to help us create a bigger view of who we are and what God means to us. If left to our own devices, our own mean judgments, according to Curtis, we will almost inevitably score poorly. We could have been, should have been better, don't we know? There's no way out of this downward internal spiral unless we are rescued by love. It's otherwise hell, all the way to hell. We are secretly condemned and sentenced to a lifetime and eternity of inadequacy, failure, and estrangement unless we are rescued by love. Someone who will bequeath dignity, worth, recognition, and gratitude upon us. Encouragement for us because of who we are and what we do. We simply cannot grasp this alone. That we are precious and amazing and of inestimable value, unless this truth is mirrored into our being by another person. We need to give and receive support, encouragement for one another as daily bread. How does this affect our view of God? Because if we're not being encouraged, we will feel alone. And what does loneliness do? Loneliness nurtures a distant God, a disconnected God, one that isn't with us and walks with us through whatever we're facing. If we're feeling inadequate, that nurtures a view of a judgmental God. I'm not good enough. I haven't done enough yet. If we are in despair, that rids God of God's existence. God simply doesn't exist. See, it's not just an intellectual image that we create God in. It is a soulful image that we bring. And we need help with our souls, and that comes through encouragement. You know, he makes this point, which is really, I think, actually quite profound. You need encouragement, especially if you do things really well. If you bring sustenance and delight to other people's lives, and you are dependable, but in a kind of paradoxical way, the better you perform and the more dependable you are, the less likely you will hear praise and gratitude. Anybody relate to that? People just think, it emanates from you. Surely you know you are wonderful. Surely you know how grateful we are for you. Surely. But you actually don't know this. If people depend on you for something, I love this phrase, you're not down and out, but rather up and out. You need to be remembered and thanked and encouraged. This is an amazing thing. And you're probably not going to admit it unless you blow up or break down and lose your veneer. You're not going to admit it, but you need to be remembered and thanked, supported, and encouraged. This is part of our spiritual evolution. This is how we create and relate to God. This is how we relate to ourselves. We relate to ourselves, to God, through people, through the gift of encouragement, the gift of love. Curtis ends his thoughts with a call to action, and I'll end my sermon with it. Encouragement is a need we all have. Encouragement is a power we all have. Unleash that power. Practice it. Even if you're running short on receiving encouragement, practice encouragement, and you will reap what you sow.